I'm actually in love with it. Oh, that's awesome.
Hi guys, so my name is Molly. I am the founder and the director of Vegan Programs. I know a lot of you guys and don't know all of you, which always makes me so excited that there are people coming from the community or from the Milestones community, which we very much consider our extended family. And I just want to say that for those of you who don't know me, it's really, really great to see you. It's really great to have you here, and Beacon offers a wide range of services for people who are struggling with every single issue having to do with struggling with food and weight. We couldn't even figure out how to explain what we did because everything was making it too simple and wasn't broad enough. And so, you know, we created this mission that we really live by and adhere by at Beacon, which is Shine Bright. And what we mean by that is to help you guys shine bright, help anybody who we try to meet shine bright. For those of you who have been here before, bathrooms are right over there. Somebody will likely be outside. I'll be around after if anybody has any questions. And I am incredibly excited to introduce one of my closest friends and closest mentors, Marty Lerner, to come and present to you guys today about Constructive Living and probably a bunch of other things that will come up along the way. And should you have any questions or thoughts or feelings or anything in between about how we can make your experience better, or, I mean, I really want to know everything that you're thinking about. So my business cards are outside. You feel free to shoot me an email or give me a call. I'd love, love, love to hear any feedback, thoughts, feelings, or anything in between. So that's it. And with that, I introduce Marty Lerner.
And that concludes today's.
Right, there it is.
Okay, so what I'd like to do, just because we are a small group, is just go around the room and just very briefly introduce ourselves with just 3 pieces to it. One is your first name. The second is how you came to be here today. Some of you are affiliated with Beacon, some maybe Milestones, what have you. And then the third thing, and probably the most important, is what you want to leave here today with from this experience. Okay? Let's start in the back.
My name is Ruth. I found this group through a random search for DVT groups, and this particular topic resonated with me. So.
Oh, good. Okay. And what do you want to leave with?
I'm not sure.
Okay, that's fair.
Maybe establishing what my next step will be.
Got it. Okay, great. Can we just pass this all the way back to 2 folks in the back? Thank you very much. Okay. Hi.
Hi, I'm Nancy. I'm in treatment at Beacon, and I have also been in treatment at Milestones. Hi. And I hope to leave here with more tools to make my relationship with food healthier.
Oh, relationship with food. Have you been dating for a while?
I'm Lily. I came here 3 years ago to hear you speak because Teresa, my nutritionist, recommended you. And when I came in here and heard you speak, I was like, I'm home. So I've been at the Beacon since then.
Cool. I just saw Teresa yesterday.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Okay, good. Sarah, I gave the first one away. Sorry.
Marty. I'm Sarah. I go to Beacon regularly. I've also done treatment at Milestones. And what I want to get from today is just kind of like really reestablishing the basics.
Okay.
I'm Lisa. I'm training here at Beacon, and I'm here to meet Marty, hear what he has to say, and leave more informed than I was when I came in.
Okay. We'll go to the back. Brooke, get that away too.
I'm Brooke. I went into Milestones also, and I love Constructive Living, and I love Marty, so I just wanted to hear the
Hi, my name's Jessica. Brooke brought me, thought I'd get some information, and I have been in treatment with food, it should be, but anyway, I'm looking to get back into some sort of program.
Okay, great. So now we'll skip to this row.
Okay, I'm Debbie. I heard about it through Molly's blog, and I really didn't come with any preconceived notions about what I would get out of it.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Jasmine, and I'm a Milestones alum. I also love Marty. And I'm here, I guess, for like a refresher course because, you know, it's been, I think, 6 or 7 years since I left Milestones, and it's nice to,
Time is going so fast.
yeah.
I'm Callie. I'm currently being treated at the Beacon, and I came here based on Molly's high recommendation, just to hear what you have to say.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Jessica, and I've been getting treatment at the Beacon for the last few months. And I've heard your name mentioned a lot by Molly and others here, and when I saw there was a talk about it.
Pressure's on.
No pressure.
Okay.
I'm Hannah, and I was at Milestones about 10 days ago, and came to see what this is about. Thank you.
Would you like to introduce yourself?
I can't hear him.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Introduce yourself. Introduce yourself. Elena Kopelman.
Okay.
And what do you hope to get out of here? Here? It's okay.
It's okay.
My name is Lisa, and I came here just to see what you have to say.
Okay, fair enough.
Hi, my name is Jamie. I'm one of the new clinicians here at the Beacon program, and I'm very excited to hear Marty speak and to really learn as much as I can so that I can share it with my clients and hopefully utilize it to get everybody on a better path.
Okay. And if you didn't know already, my name's Marty. Just by way of disclaimer, or just as a point of reference as I'm speaking today, part of what I have to say has to do with what I do for a living and training and all that stuff, but another part comes from some personal experiences without going into a lot of, too much information, but, so just know that there are two components that blend together. So some of it is from research and clinical experience, and some is from personal experience. We'll leave it at that. So, a broad stroke of all this, just to set the stage for what we're going to be doing. I tend to look at eating disorders as a broad, umbrella. And under that umbrella, a lot of people are familiar with terms like anorexia, bulimia, binge eating, compulsive overeating, and so on and so forth. And from my perspective, historically and a lot of today, people tend to define eating disorders in terms of what someone weighs or how they look. And in my experience, that's the least effective way to define an eating disorder. And the reason for that is that there are people who are underweight by a medical standard who binge eat. And there are people who binge eat or compulsive overeaters that are not overweight. And also, that's not complicated enough, there are people who are overweight that are not eating disordered, and there are people that are eating disordered that don't have a weight disorder. So it's not as simple as just pairing it apart. It's more like other addictions have been in the past, like alcoholism used to have, sort of this myth that if you were an alcoholic, you weren't working, you lived under a bridge, you wore sneakers and a trench coat. And the reality is that the overwhelming majority of people that have alcohol dependency, you wouldn't be able to pick out of the crowd. Well, I don't think that's much different than people with eating disorders. I don't think you can diagnose or make an assumption based on someone's appearance. So I wanted to kind of plant that seed and have you keep it in the back of your mind. And also that when we talk about treating an eating disorder as opposed to a weight disorder, people often can fall into the trap of treating it as a diet or as a weight loss program rather than a recovery program. And a recovery program is much more comprehensive than just treating the symptom, which might be a weight issue or might not be a weight issue, but the disease, the problem, the illness, if you will, is much more expansive than an appearance issue, a cosmetic issue, or a weight issue. Does that make sense to you guys? Sure. Okay. So let me just talk broadly about addiction, and then we can look at making the case for an eating disorder or compulsive overeating or binge eating being an eating disorder as opposed to a weight disorder. And then I'm going to kind of go into a little bit of a discussion of what constructive living is, so it won't be such a mystery in all of this. But let me just suggest to you that when you look at the word addiction, anybody want to take a stab at defining what that is? Sarah, I knew you would do that. Okay, yes, Sarah.
Any behavior or substance that you use to fix a feeling?
Perfect, wow. You must be an alumni. Okay. Here's what I would suggest. If someone came down from Mars, you'd probably be institutionalized, but if someone came down from Mars and asked you what an addiction is, or how do you explain it, I would really distill it down to this. All addictions, whether it is, in my opinion, bulimia, anorexia, binge eating, alcohol dependency, heroin dependency, compulsive gambling, non-substance addiction, compulsive shopping, what have you, all addictions have one thing in common, and that is that in the beginning, they're there to fix feelings. No one is innately born liking the taste of alcohol. Everybody drinks for effect. Otherwise, it'd be a big run on old duels. It'd be like the stock would go through the roof. No one innately wants to eat so much food that they're in pain. And nobody wants to starve. So people do things, all of us, in the service of fixing how we feel or manipulating how we feel. So conversely, if you look at what I'm calling recovery, recovery is the antithesis of that. Recovery is learning how to accept, not push away, how to tolerate, how to experience discomfort without having to fix it. So anybody that has gone from, we'll call it an addiction, to recovery has gone through a phase where they've had what I'll call legitimate suffering. Because you have to be ready to lose or have taken away or sacrificed the one or two things that you may have been dependent upon in order to control how you feel. Makes sense, right? So that's the simplified piece. And I'll explain to you without being specific about an addiction. Remember, I'm looking at it as a generic term because it has all these commonalities. Here's how I would experience it. Actually, how I did experience it. In the beginning of addiction, it works. I'm going to use 3 examples. Alcohol. Start drinking alcohol in college or whatever, it's wonderful. All of a sudden you can dance, you look better. All of a sudden, girls and people are talking to you. It's wonderful, right? Eating. You're 10 years old and whatnot. Food all of a sudden tastes great. This is wonderful. Ice cream. Wow, what a rush. Good stuff. Maybe I'll snort it. Okay. So, and then we go on and on and on. Could be gambling, could be whatever. Now, and we'll define what an addiction is. The American Psychiatric Association has 7 symptoms of it, but I'll go through it in a minute. So in the beginning, it's working. Great. Bulimia, it's like Burger King, you can have it your way. Literally, you can have your cake and eat it, right? Wonderful, I've discovered a new thing. I can eat as much as I want and not gain weight. Anorexia, I'm dieting and everybody's complimenting me. Beginning, great. Middle stage of addiction, you get into, it's not so great. You probably can describe it as the thrill is gone. So now it's still worth keeping around, but it's not, it's not working its magic. And you need to do more of it to get the same effect, tolerance. Now there's a consequence or two happening. Maybe you're not feeling well physically, maybe if it's alcohol, you're having a hangover. If it's food, you're gaining weight, or from compulsive overeating, or people are not complimenting you on looking better now. They're starting to have negative things to say about your losing weight, or So middle stage is the beginning of some consequences. Here's the hook, end stage. End-stage addiction is you're not doing it anymore to feel good. You're doing it to avoid the effect of not doing it. You're doing it, if you're an alcoholic, to avoid withdrawal, to be able to answer the phone, to take a drink in the morning so you can go to work. Now, that's the extreme end stage. With eating disorders, 3 hospitalizations later for anorexia. You know, when you get out of the hospital, you may resume losing weight or whatever, because it's better to deal with that than deal with depression, or what it feels like to experience yourself, regardless of how other people experience you, as unacceptable. For compulsive overeating, same thing. There's nothing else in life. You've given up. You know, the one thing that you can marry and romance and fill all your needs is being married to the refrigerator. And if you don't do it, you're suffering physically, emotionally. You know, what else is there? So end stage is the point, somewhere on that continuum between middle stage and end stage, is where most people look for help. Okay. Any questions about that so far? Yeah.
Can a person be in end-stage addiction and still feel, when they take the substance, an initial rush?
Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely.
they can.
Oh, yeah,
Okay, and it can still be
absolutely.
because I've heard people say sometimes, oh, it doesn't even taste good anymore, I'm just
Yeah,
wolfing it down.
that's more typical, but here's what happens. What happens is the effect of tolerance. And tolerance, you can go up in tolerance up to a lethal level. So let's say you're at end stage and you're over here at end stage. You know, you've just come into end stage. So I'm just going to use this as an example now. Suppose it's heroin. We'll use that for, you know. So you're taking this much heroin, but you're not getting any effect out of it anymore. The thrill is gone, the reward, you're just doing it to avoid, right, withdrawal. But you say, I don't care anymore. I want to feel good. So you have to take more heroin. So for a short period of time, you get this buzz, but then you quickly come down. But with heroin, as it is with most substances, there's a threshold where it won't work anymore. And that threshold is close to the lethal threshold. So you can die, you know, it's rare, but you can die from an overdose of drinking too much alcohol. You can die from an overdose of heroin, which is now laced with fentanyl, which is 100 times stronger. Yeah. But do people die from overeating? Absolutely. You won't see it on their death certificate, but it'll say stroke, cardiovascular disease, complications of diabetes, and, you know, all that stuff that you hear about with obesity, you'll hear. But what about, you know, esophageal hemorrhage? What about, you know, people that are throwing up cardiac arrhythmia from dehydration, low potassium, and all of that? Remember, tolerance means you have to do more of the same behavior to get the same effect. So you could start out, you know, with binging, let's say, only on weekends. Now it's, you know, binging every day. Now it's binging and spilled over to work. Now it's binging, you know, whenever there's food around and no one's looking. Because none of us practice, you know, our eating disorder, usually with a crowd. I don't know about you guys, but I'm not going to be binging in a full tuxedo and taking a plate and putting it down by myself and, you know, having a 3-course meal. You're usually there either naked or in your underwear in front of a refrigerator in a feeding frenzy. It's not like you're expecting company. Then you hear something in the hall and you freak out and everything crashes down like you're stealing pills from your grandmother or something, you know, so that's what happens. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody identify with this at all?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Just checking.
Can't relate at all.
Just checking.
I don't know what any of this is about.
Just checking. Okay, so that's kind of like, you know, the broad stroke of all of this. Now, you know, I can spend literally days talking about the etiology or what causes an eating disorder. And here's the truth. No one has a definitive answer. If someone tells you they have a definitive answer on what caused an eating disorder, I would take 2 medium rocks, throw it at them and run in the other direction, because they don't have the answer. And here's something very, very important that's going to lead into what we're talking about. Knowing why has nothing to do with getting better. That's the rub. Now that flies in the face of traditional therapy. That doesn't mean that therapy, be it cognitive behavioral therapy, feeling-oriented therapy, and all of that stuff doesn't have a utility. It does, but not for an addiction. Because what will happen in therapy, if you have an addiction that you're trying to deal with, an eating disorder, you'll spend 10 years in therapy, and you'll be the most knowledgeable person on the face of the earth about knowing the intricacies of how your mind works around food, while you're binging, purging, and restricting, while you're drinking, drugging, and sending everybody else to treatment. Same thing with meditation. You can teach it, but if you're not doing it, you can't give away what you don't have. So, must be for me. So anyway, how many of you would say that prior to coming to Beacon or anything else, that you've tried counseling, self-help, or some form of connecting the dots to understand what's going on? Most of us, right? Okay, connecting the dots relevant to an eating disorder will not get you better. I can know that the reason I overate as a young, infant, going up until when I was 40 or something like that, was because I was breastfed by my mother too long, and she only allowed me to her left breast. I was never allowed to go to her right breast, so now I binge on turkey breast. I can know all of that stuff. I can know that my onset of my eating disorder might have started when I was left alone too much, or whatever, or there was some trauma, or somebody rejected me, or, you can know the precipitant, but by the time you reach end stage, it's irrelevant in terms of getting better. Is it irrelevant in terms of dealing with some other stuff? Maybe not. Depression, anxiety, those kinds of things, it may be relevant for that. But for being able to refrain from your eating disorder, I don't think so. That's my bias. Matter of fact, you'll see in a moment, I think that recanting past experiences can do more harm than good. That's controversial. I'll show you.
You're talking about like Freudian sort of therapy?
No, not necessarily. It can be that, but like a lot of trauma work, the assumption with trauma work is if you work through it. If anybody, by the way, I have a $50 bill in my wallet, if anybody can really, to my satisfaction, define what working through means, you can have the $50 bill. Because in my business, we have this whole language that we don't even understand. Okay, so I forgot where I was with all that, but no, if you connecting the dots, it just won't work. What was your question again?
For analysis, for that sort of work, I find didn't help with my eating disorder.
No, but it's not just that. There's a lot of counseling, therapy, psychiatry that has to do with connecting dots or expressing feelings, and that we'll say is inside oriented. And like I said, in an addiction, intellectual knowledge won't touch the addiction. It'll only make you more frustrated because it's in the center of the brain. And it has nothing to do with intellect. It has to do with your reptilian brain, where there's a reward system. So, you can think you know everything. That's why addictions don't discriminate. You have attorneys, you have physicians, you have rocket scientists, and you have people with a third-grade education, and on and on. It doesn't have a demographic thread because everybody has to have a reward system in their limbic system in order to survive. But if you are run on intellect, you're going to make that your holy grail. Or you're going to make feelings your holy grail. But it's not the holy grail. Okay? All right. So let me go into a piece here, and that's about constructive living. I'll tell you a little story about this, and then I'll explain what it is, and then we can chat about it a little bit. But constructive living is just the Western phrase that describes this. It's kind of a philosophy more than a treatment, but I'll explain it again in a moment. But it comes from the East, from Japan actually. There's a gentleman who I met a long time ago named David Reynolds. He's an anthropologist by training, but studied psychiatry in Japan in the early 80s. And then he came over here and he now teaches psychiatry at UCLA. And what he did is he blended some of the best elements of that culture's psychiatric treatment, not chemical treatment, but therapy treatment, and blended it with Western. And it's interesting to me because it's kind of catching up with what is, just like looking at food addiction now is becoming evidence-based when it was, not in the past. So Far Eastern tradition, with psychiatry and psychology has to do with meditation, reflection, gratitude. Any of this sound familiar? Have to do with looking at transcending emotions and being able to develop the discipline to do things. So there were two psychiatrists that he studied under. One was I can't say the first names because I can't even order sushi, let alone speak Japanese. So can I have the white tuna? Okay, so it's a Dr. Morito, I can pronounce that, and one that's like the sneakers, a Dr. Nakon. I call him Nike. Okay. And Dr. Nike emphasized reflection, meditation, and they actually had hospitals, still do, but there are not a lot of them, where if you had depression, they didn't treat the eating disorders. If you had depression, they would put you in, it's not a spa, but a place where you'd be in solitude, like a monk, and they would just ask you to reflect and just meditate, and that was the treatment for depression. Look, that's not where I'm going when I'm depressed, I'm just saying that that's what they did. It helped in that culture for some people, not everybody. And then on the other side of that, Morito was teaching his students how to behaviorally change without having to change how they feel. I'll explain that a little bit more. So that's the roots of it. So I came across this in 1984, and I started to try it. Side conference here, side tangential. You will not remember 99% of what you heard me say today by tomorrow. The human mind doesn't work that way. The only way you'll remember something is if there's an experience attached to it or an emotion attached to it. Anybody here remember anything when a celebrity died, like Princess Diane or something like that? You remember what's going on because there's an emotion attached to it. Can you remember what you wore yesterday? I don't think so. Don't even try, please. Okay, so there's emotion attached to it and experience, right? There's muscle memory, right? There's also neuroplasticity, there's cognitive memory. So I can be, remember I said about yoga? I can be an expert on yoga or an expert intellectually about golf or tennis, know everything about it. But if I've never played tennis, I have no skill at all. So doing is more important than knowing. There's an old Buddhist expression, Far East, remember, right? If I read something, I'll forget it. If I see something, maybe I'll remember it. But if I do something, I'll understand it. This is all about the doing part. So I was very much influenced this, having a background in traditional therapies. I was trained in psychoanalytic therapy at first, which didn't go over well. My mom put me on a school bus literally when I was 5, and I got off when I was 32. So I didn't have a break. So I was intellectually over here, but emotionally over here. That said, I'm learning about Sigmund Freud, about Oedipal and Electra complexes. Oedipal complex, oh my God, how could that be possible? And I go home to visit my parents, I see my mother, I start running down the street. I'm like hysterical, I think this can't be. Okay, so even Freud said sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. But usually it's not a cigar. Okay, so, and then there was cognitive behavioral, and then Rogerian, which is more feeling-based and listening, based. I'm oversimplifying. But I'm going to give you 3 pieces that summarize the world of psychotherapy, 3 philosophies in 3 sentences. One is, you ought to change how you feel, so get in touch with your feelings first. I mean, the mantra of every therapist is, how do you feel about that? How do you feel? How do you feel? Does that feel good? So feelings come first, with the assumption that if they can fix, or you can fix how you feel, then you can fix how you think, or what you thought you think, right? Fix how you feel, resolve, I love this. How do you feel about that? We need to work through your mother issues. Feelings, working through. Okay, so theoretically, you get all your feelings out about your mother, your father, your uncle, your wife, your spouse, whatever, and that ought to have some result or influence on what? On your behavior, right? So if you take an alcoholic and you explore the alcoholic's feelings, discover that the alcoholic has social anxiety, and that's why he drinks, that if you can help the alcoholic feel less socially anxious, right, he'll stop drinking, because his thinking is, I don't have to drink anymore because I'll feel more comfortable, and so I won't drink. I've never seen that happen, ever. If I'm anorectic, and it comes out that the reason I'm anorectic, or my feelings being explored, is I feel inadequate. And by losing weight, even being the most successful of everybody I know losing weight, even to the point where it may compromise my health or whatnot, at least I have that, which is a mantra, by the way, for a lot of people with that disease. So the therapist is thinking, well, if we can get these feelings out, maybe we can change the thinking that, cognitive therapy, whatever, maybe you're not, the worst. Maybe you don't have to do that. Maybe, there's another way you can feel better, and then perception, think better of yourself, and that'll change the behavior. You'll start eating. Never seen that happen. Okay. The other mantra, okay, that was one form of therapy, is more the dynamic, analytic, insight-oriented, cognitive behavioral, okay? By the way, don't get worried. The closest fit to Constructive Living, CL, is DBT. So we're not going to be bashing because if I did that, I would be escorted out by the end of it. Okay. The DBT does work, but think about something. It's not based on feelings and manipulating your thoughts per se. It's learning skills. It's a doing therapy. Okay. All right. So the next one is like cognitive behavioral, insight-oriented, right? So now it's reversed. If I can change your thoughts, then it'll influence how you feel, and then you'll behave yourself, right? So let me change your thoughts. What do you think? Well, we have a crosswire, distorted assumption, or whatever, and you change someone's perception or their thinking. That may make them feel, let's say, more confident or better or whatever. But it's coming from changing their perception or their thinking, right? And it's influencing their feelings and therefore their behavior. I've seen this work, okay, short term, very short term. That's just my experience and my bias. But I wouldn't want recovery from alcohol, drugs, an eating disorder to be dependent on controlling what I think. Because if you tell me that I should not think of something, I will obsess about it. If you tell me to think about something, I'll think about it and then get distracted and forget it. So it's short term for me. You ever try to remember a phone number when there's a crisis? You don't even remember what the phone's for, let alone how to do the number. Okay. Here is where cognitive therapy and all of this kind of goes by the wayside with an addiction, and we talk about constructive living. This is going to be very simple, but it's very difficult to practice on a consistent basis. It is rooted in the belief that you have to change your behavior first. Now, before I go on with all of this, people will tell me they can't. They'll use this word, I can't. So if I said to someone, drop this pen, they'd be able to drop the pen, right? But if I said to someone, try and drop the pen, try and drop the pen, they'll drop it, but I didn't say drop it, I said try. My point is this. If I went around the room and I said, don't edit yourself, tell me a sentence that you frequently use you preface with, I can't. I can't go to the beach until I lose weight. I can't handle this. I can't afford this. I can't make it at 5 o'clock. Socially, it's inappropriate to tell the truth, but you might as well tell it to yourself. What's happening is it's not that you can't, it's that you don't want to. Which is fair enough. That's fair. But it's not that you can't. So, when you look at behavior before we even go on, the only exception that you don't have control over are involuntary behaviors. They're mostly physical. And if you're an end-stage addiction, it's close, but you may not have a choice with picking up a drink, or the food, or starving, or whatever. So that's a little controversial, so it's kind of like a half here. But there are very few things, I'd say 99.9, that are impossible for you to do, but there's lots of things you don't want to do. So we take those examples, right? It's not that I can't make it at 5, I've got better things to do, or something more important. It's not that I can't afford it, it's I don't want to pay that much for it. It's not that I can't handle it, it's I don't want to have to deal with this. That's honest. So constructive living is looking at that, and then it's saying, your choice, whatever, but it's a choice, not a mandate. But if you change the behavior first, that will indirectly change how you feel and probably change your thinking. But here's the deal. I'll give you a couple of examples. Do you think you can recover from alcoholism or be in recovery from alcoholism before you stop drinking? You'd have to stop drinking in order for you to feel better. Do you think you can be in recovery from an eating disorder until you stop doing the eating disorder? It's impossible. And we go on the list, okay? But here's a good example. In Japan, what's the number one problem that people under 30 present to Japanese psychiatrists? They took a survey.
Depression?
Depression, close, but no. Shyness. The Japanese culture, okay, for some reason is very, formal and whatever, and built on a hierarchy. I don't know it all, but the culture begets males in the culture being very rejection phobic or shy. So the number one complaint that they go to therapy for is shyness. So this is the difference concretely in therapy. Let's just say I'm, Japanese, okay? And I go to an analyst, all right? I'm lying on a couch for 10 years figuring out why I'm shy. Aren't I? I mean, you're shy because, whatever. But I'm analyzing it, right? Okay. And the assumption is if I can figure it out, I'll have some abreaction or emotional experience on a repressed memory. I'm oversimplifying. And then I'll put the dots together and I won't be shy. That ain't happening.
Hi, how are you?
Good. So what's happening here is I'm spending time in that therapy and I'm getting nowhere. Let's be reasonable. I spend a year in therapy at, I don't know how many yen per hour it is, so, probably equivalent to 3 sushi meals or whatever. Okay. Then I go to another therapist after a year because this isn't working, right? I'm still alone, I'm still shy, I'm still isolating, I'm miserable. So I go to another therapist, and he starts to probe, well, what are you telling yourself when you see someone you're attracted to and you want to ask them to coffee or ask them out? So I say to the therapist, well, I say to myself, I'm too fat. And then the therapist starts to challenge that, or I'm too stupid. And we try to reframe that, or maybe I'm catastrophizing, that if I get rejected, I won't be able to handle it. Right? I mean, it could be any number of things we tell ourselves, because we're all afraid of rejection, right? Okay. So we try to reorder that, and we can do that a little bit. Cognitive behavioral therapy can do that a little bit. So we reframe what we're telling ourselves with a dose of reality, kind of a wise mind thing, okay? We have anxiety, and then the dialectic is we have rational thinking. I want to get in a relationship. Wise mind says, okay. But wise mind and constructive living meet when it comes to this. Because the cognitive behavioral therapist is working on changing your thinking, that might lower your anxiety level. But a precondition for your asking someone out is what? Not feeling anxious. Anytime, trust me on this, you go out and see for yourself. Anytime you put a feeling as a precondition to doing something, you've got an investment of never having to feel uncomfortable. Let me run that again. If you make doing the next right thing conditional on feeling something, feeling more comfortable, feeling thin enough to go to the beach or exercise, feeling confident enough to speak or whatever, you'll never get to do it. Or you'll rely on a chemical to do it. Right? Anybody here ever drink for courage? Take a sedative so you could handle answering the phone? Okay, so constructive living that's bullshit. So now I come in, right? I've spent 2 years and thousands of dollars in therapy, and this is what I would do if I were still doing this. And we spent the first session, I said, what do you want? And you got, well, I want a relationship. And then I would say to you, well, tell me specifically how someone gets a relationship. And then I, get this whole intellectual answer, and I said, well, isn't it that you ask somebody out? Yeah. Okay. And that you have conversation with them? You do something with somebody. And then I say to me, because I'm the patient, first session, I can't do that because, and I would say this, because I'm having an anxiety attack. I'd be so nervous that I would look foolish. So I already told myself it's impossible unless I feel better. And then I said, can you write me a script? Okay. If I'm a constructive living therapist, I would be saying within half hour of the session, getting to that, I would say, I'm willing to meet with you up to 10 weeks, but each week is conditional on your doing a homework assignment. I guarantee you 3/4 of the people that I see first session aren't coming back for a second. I'd starve to death, which would give me another problem. Okay, but the people that come back, they get it. And here's what would happen. I would say to that person, here's what you need to do. You need to go out, not find 3 women that you're heads over heels attracted to, but 3 women that are reasonably attractive, that you're attracted to. And you need to ask each one until you get one to go to coffee with you. And whether shaking in your boots, urinating in your pants, having a seizure or not, you still can do it. Even if you're flopping on the ground like a fish out of water, you can look up and say, will you have coffee with me? The patient would be nervous, but able to do it. They may look at themselves cognitively and say, I made an ass of myself or whatever. How many of you have ever taken a risk done something that you were absolutely sure you're going to get rejected at and weren't rejected? How many of you look back on your life of all the missed opportunities that you passed on because you were afraid your ego was going to get assaulted? Okay, so you get the drift. So three people, you come back next week. What were you going to say?
I've got a basic question that's very relevant to me working on physical abstinence. My therapist says, I want you to just go and ask 3 men to have coffee. Is part of it, though, that my therapist says, it doesn't matter at all if all 3 say no?
Well, it does matter, but here's the deal. What matters is that you're doing it and don't have control over the outcome. But you have control over increasing the probability of getting what you want, not a guarantee. But let me ask you this. If you didn't ask out those 3 people, let's say you came back and said, I did this, I asked 3 people out,
Right.
Everybody said no.
Right.
Then I would say, okay, well, you get a pass, you can come back, still, you get a pass. Now ask 3 more. You're going to tell me that 6 people in a row are going to do that? Highly unlikely. But I'll give you a story about oh, thank you so much. 10 minutes. Okay. When I was trying this, okay, I thought I was really doing constructive living. I'll give you the example. Constructive living would say if reality is constantly giving us stuff we have to attend or do. Okay? So one day I come home, my wife was teaching at the time, and it was like she would be home in a half hour. And when I walked in the house, came in early, the dishes were in the sink, they weren't clean. Cognitively, I'm saying to myself, she should be doing the dishes. Let's not get into the chauvinistic thing, but she should be doing the dishes. But then I'm doing constructive living. So if I'm doing constructive living, the dishes need washing. Reality doesn't care who washes them. That's reality. They need to be washed. So I'm going to be good at constructive living. I start washing the dishes, and I'm being mindful. I'm looking at the bubbles. I'm like really focusing on doing a great job with the dishes. Man, if David Reynolds came to my house, I'd be given the certification right there. Okay. While I'm doing the dishes, I'm having thoughts that my wife is going to come through the door, see the dishes are clean, and be so enamored that I did the dishes that we're going to have theme night right in the kitchen. That she's just going to give me the time of my life. So 3:30 comes around. She comes in, all the dishes are done, they're spotless. She doesn't even notice the dishes are done. The purpose of constructive living is clean dishes. The purpose of not drinking is not getting drunk. Because what happens, people go to AA, let's just say, and they're going to save their marriage. Or they're saying to themselves, I'll stop drinking because I really need to stop drinking. But they really are going because they want to save their marriage, and they're 6 months sober, and someone says to them, I'm so happy and relieved you're not drinking, but this isn't working for me. What happens? What happens when you lose weight for someone because you want a relationship, now you have the relationship? What needs doing is not in the service of trying to control the outcome. What's that sound like? These principles go identical to 12-step programs. If you study them enough, you'll know that's where it came from. All psychiatry, all counseling, all of this stuff comes from roots in philosophical belief systems, either Judo-Christian psychiatry in America, or Buddhist and maybe some Hindu influence in the East. And it's been formulated into universal truths. So if you really read objectively every great literature about how to live life, the Quran, the Bible, the Torah, whatever, they all have universal truths. That's what this is. So, all right, so that's what happens with constructive living. The biggest mistake people make, including myself, is being disappointed with the outcome. But here's a reality. It's a batting average. If you do what needs doing consistently with discipline, the feelings will catch up with the behavior. And here's something to boot. There's no way you can get healthy without doing healthy things. There's no way you can get recovery without doing recovery. There's no way you can sustain love without doing love. Which brings me to the 7 principles, and then you can leave, Sarah. Okay. Not that I'm obsessed with trying to codependently take care of you, but I am. Okay. So if you turn to this, this is the distillation, and then we'll break after this. Is this all okay for you guys? Is this making? Okay. So the distillation is basically, I'd say, 6 major principles. One is you can't will your feelings to change. No way. You can't sit down any reliable way, and if you're mad, just will yourself not to be mad. Or will yourself to not feel scared. Or will yourself, to love someone you fell out of love with. You just can't will your feelings. Okay? What would be a second one? Okay. Every feeling, no matter how painful, has a purpose. You can't possibly know joy unless you've known sadness. You wouldn't have a point of reference. But physical pain also. I don't want to have a toothache. But through evolution, I didn't have a toothache and a nervous system, I'd die of a brain abscess. Sometimes feelings are telling us what we need to do. Case in point, I'm nervous about a test. The anxiety can propel you to study. So feelings can motivate you to do something. You need to study whether you felt anxious or not, but it has a purpose, right? Sometimes feelings, do tell us what to do, but sometimes what they tell us to do is do nothing. But they still tell us what to do. So every feeling has a purpose.
What is that second word?
This one?
Or acceptance?
Just remember the word acceptance.
Acceptance, okay.
Every feeling has a purpose.
Yeah.
You can't will yourself to feel what you want to feel. And feelings need to be accepted as they are. So a lot of people get confused about this because this isn't about poo-pooing feelings. It's about experiencing them, being mindful of them, even if they're uncomfortable, staying with them, accepting them, not repressing, suppressing, or distracting always, but feel your feelings and accept them as they are without having to fix them. Okay? So accepting your feelings would be another one. And behavior is the only way that I know of that will indirectly, through the back door, influence how you think and feel. Anybody here had the feeling they were tired, irritable, didn't want to go to a support group meeting, or didn't want to go to work, or didn't want to go on a date, or didn't want to do something socially, and you were feeling tired, you were feeling irritable, you were feeling angry, you were just feeling like, I don't want to do any of this. Your thinking was, I deserve to stay home, I exercised yesterday, so I don't need to do it today, I went to a meeting 2 days ago, and so that's the thinking part. But ended up going anyway, and ended up thinking and feeling differently after the meeting. Not a guarantee, but that's what we're talking about. It isn't an experience until you've done it. The movie is in your head, not in reality. Okay, my favorite, 3 minutes to do Paula Goldberg. Feelings fade over time unless re-stimulated. What happens when you get on a scale? Do you re-stimulate your obsession about weight?
Yes.
And the reading? Of course. It's about triggers. Here's the story, how I remember this one. Paula Goldberg was my 8th grade crush. I went from a compulsive overeater to kind of an anorectic stance. because I fell in love with Paula in 8th grade when she walked in my earth science class. I remember it as if it was yesterday. She was, I'm a little older, but she was wearing go-go boots, white patent boots, mini skirt, plaid, and a white top, and she was overdeveloped for someone that was 14. And she walked right past me. I could care less about a hamburger, french fries, and a Coke. I wanted Paula. So from that day on, a raisins, rye crisp, and a tab. They didn't have Diet Coke. I know I'm dating myself. Anyway, so I dated Paula, got what I wanted. Careful what you pray for. Okay, so Paula and I are an item now from 9th grade until prom time senior year. We go to the prom together. We're both going to go to college. She's going to Cortland Teachers College. I'm going to Nathaniel Hawthorne College for Wayward Boys. Okay, didn't do well in high school. I'm going to meet with Paula, and I've decided we need to take a break from each other because, you know, I'm a nice guy and I want to be honest, but I want to see other people. I don't want to, you know, have the same fare, you know, all the time. I'm young. I mean, you know, I want to sow wild oats or whatever the hell this expression is. And so I meet with Paula at the Town Diner, Central Avenue, Cedarhurst, New York, Long Island. And I'm about to tell her I think we should take a break and not see each other and see other people. And she says, before I said anything, there's something I want to tell you. I said, okay, you go first. She proceeds to tell me, and I quote, I really care about you, but I think it's time we see other people. My heart was broken. In a millisecond, this was all a big mistake. I really do love her. I can't live with her. How can this, you know, how could you do this to me? And, you know, so for the next 2 years, I'm lip singing, you know, Hey, Hey, Paula. I'm pretending, you know, Ringo Starr because I play drums with the Beatles. I'm looking in a mirror, thinking that she's out in 50,000 people in a Chase Stadium at a concert, and I'm just singing to her, and I swoon over her, and she comes running up on the stage and tells me what a big mistake it is, and I love it. It's just when my parents walk in, smell the pot, and listen to the music, and it's all over. Okay. And I'm carrying around pictures of Paula. My friends are all running the other direction because I'm constantly asking, have you seen Paula? Any word about Paula? I call and hang up when I hear her voice. I go around Northwood near June Place, and my car, you know, I see a strange car in the driveway. My mind's telling me it's, you know, half of Lawrence High School's basketball team in her bedroom entertaining her. You know, just totally nuts. What's happening? Are feelings fading over time? Allison Steele, radio. Anybody equate certain songs with broken hearts? And password. I'm looking for the songs. I might as well just stab myself in the eye with a pencil. But that's what I'm doing. Okay. Feelings fade over time unless we stimulate it. I'm not getting over the relationship. I've been telling this story for a lot of years, so I decided to put a picture in there. And my friend Vinny is on one side, and I'm holding Paul, and I've got a cigarette. Also did the cigarettes. I was 18, but she's in the front, just so you know she's real.
Oh, good heavens.
With that, let's take a break. Come back in 10 minutes.
Yeah.